Hey everyone, Eric with Rockin H. In this video I'll show you how to use Tinkercad. I'm going to show you the way I basically taught myself, which is just to dive in and start doing things. I did watch a couple of random videos, just introductory things, so no keyboard shortcuts and how to use the mouse and things like that, but I'll show you that here in this video. I was looking for a project that would be basically simple enough that anyone could dive in and do it fairly easy. So I found this old fuel barrel on I think it's a Dodge Bison or something. It's a Dodge truck, not a pickup, but a regular semi or grain truck or something like that. I thought it was interesting, so I thought this would be a great one to begin with. So to start, I went out to the internet and I searched basically 80-gallon fuel tanks. I'm not sure how big that one on the Dodge is. I have no idea. But I found this one. It's an 80-gallon. It's 26 by 38 inches long. So you can see all the dimensions here, which is something I look for when I go to design something. I try and find that object and then at least some basic dimensions. Now that we have something we can work with as far as dimensions, we need to convert all these inches to 64th scale. To do that, I made this little spreadsheet here. You can see 26 and 38 inches respectively, divided by 64. You get a decimal point, and then I turn those into fractions here. And this is actually what 7/16 in decimal form looks like. So it's not, we're 3/10 of an inch off, but whoop-de-doo. You'll never in a million years see that insignificant difference. And then we had 0.56, which is 9/16. And there's 38 divided by 64. So we're going to use 7/16 and 9/16. Now, we're not done yet. Once we have our fractions figured out, then we need to change it to millimeters, because design software is in millimeters. Everything is designed using the metric system. So now we take 7/16, plug it in, and it calculates that we're 11.1125 millimeters in diameter, and then we'll change this to 9. So we have 11 and 14. I'm rounding just to have whole numbers easy to remember. Now that we have our math figured out, now we can go and design. Log into your free Tinkercad account, go to create new design. Now you have your work plane, or your workspace, however you want to say it, and from here it's fairly intuitive to use. It's a lot of fun. Since we're making a fuel barrel, we're going to need a cylinder. So we're going to grab that. You just drop and drag, or drag and drop, however you want to say it. And you'll notice that this cylinder is standing up versus on its side. So we can quickly change that. So this little triangle up here, and you see that arrow that's bent, that allows us to change the orientation of the object. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. There. Now we have our fuel barrel out, laying down, I mean. You can grab one of these squares and drag that out however you want. I like to plug in my dimensions. So this one here is the diameter, which was 11 millimeters. And then we had the length, which was 14. And then we have one more dimension we got to put in. You'll notice that our tank is 20 millimeters tall. Well, we don't want that. We want it to be 11. And now we have our tank set. Now, to rotate the plane the way you see me doing that here, so you can see all the sides, you can right-click on the plane anywhere and spin it the way you see me doing it here. So you want to do that, you're going to right-click. Also, you can use this up here. You can click on different dimensions of this box right here, as you can see, and it'll move it for you if that's an easier way to look at it. So either way, there's two ways to move this plane around. Right-clicking and then using this box up here in the corner. Now, let's go take a look at our photo. We have these two bands here. we have a fuel cap, and then we have this step, and we also have some sort of, looks like perforated aluminum right here. Let's take a look at that, see how we can make that in Tinkercad. To make those bands, I'm going to click on our cylinder here on our tank. And before we get to that, we're going to zoom in. I'm going to show you something real fast. You see these little lines going around here? Well, we want our tank smoother than this. Right here it says sides, and right now there are 20 sides. So if you were to count these little sides, there'd be 20. Well, we want it more round, so I'm going to max that out to 64 sides. Now you see how much smoother that is? When we get this actually 3D printed, you won't even notice any of the sides. Also, let's say you want to make your edges of the tank softer. On a cylinder, you can actually go over here to this thing called bevel up here, and you can see how right here we have a bevel on the edge of our tank, and you can make that as round or as beveled as you want, or not at all. I'll leave it at 0.33. Okay, so now we have a little bevel on the edge of our tank. Actually, I'm going to take it out. I kind of like the sharp edges. Back to the bands. Okay, I'm going to click on this tank. I'm going to copy it right here using this copy feature or duplicate feature. You can see Control-D would be your keyboard shortcut. And I'm going to change that to red so I can see it differently. Okay, so we have two tanks here. Okay, one's red and one's the brown color. Why did I make two? Glad you asked. Well, I want to make these bands right here. Okay, now they're not actually going to print red. I just changed color so I can see them better and have them stand out. What I'm going to do is we're going to change from 14. We're going to make this 1 millimeter wide. See that? So now our band is going to be 1 millimeter, and we need to make two. But we're not done yet. If you remember, the red band is a copy of the yellow one, or gold colored one. They're the same size. Well, we want that to stand out. So we're going to change that from 11 millimeters to 12. And then we're going to change this to 12. That's the height. So we want this band to stand out against, it's going to be raised on the tank, just like the real one. Now you'll notice, see how these two are not in alignment? Tinkercad has this great feature to make those align easy. You want to select both items so you can kind of draw over top of both of them and select them, or you can click each item and hold your shift key, and that will also select them. Then we're going to come up to this item right here where it says align. See these dots right here? This will align both items on the plane. So centered align here, and then centered align here. Whoops, didn't quite get them. There we go, now we can see it. Okay, see how that moved automatically? And if you look, this is aligned perfectly all the way around. This is exactly what we want. Now we don't really have any idea where these bands go on the tank because we have no dimensions at all to work with. So we'll just have to guess. And it looks like they're a couple inches in from the end. Now I want to move this band on the tank, and I've selected just the red band. I'm going to use my arrow key on my keyboard, and I'm going to move that out. Then I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to move it out to the other end. Now if you want these exactly spaced on your tank, there's a ruler function here in Tinkercad. You left click on that and drag it out to your plane. And now you can see you have a ruler where you can determine where the spacing is on your tank and the bands. And you can click on them and it'll tell you, like right here for example, that's 12 millimeters from this 0 point. And then this one would be 1 millimeter from 0 here. And then it'll also tell you the orientation of your tank itself. So just something FYI there. Next, this is something I do on the tanks that I've done just because I think it's easier to mount these to DCP or any trucks generally, is to give this a flat surface to mount to the frame. So I'm going to drag a box out here. I'm going to change the color of that just so it's really different to see. You'll notice it's huge. Now we'll change the dimensions of this box. We're going to make this 1 millimeter. And we're going to make it 14 millimeters tall. And then we need to change the width here. It's 20 millimeters. We're going to just start with 5 and you'll understand why I'm doing this in a moment. Now remember how we did the align feature with the bands on the tank so they were perfectly in alignment with the tank? You can do that with the band itself and then this yellow box. So I've clicked those two items separately and we're just going to align those and make sure that they are perfectly aligned. And then we don't have to guess. There, now I can see it. There. Now you can see that they're aligned. Okay, still a little tall. Also, you might notice that I have moved this whole plane like this. To do that, you hold your shift key down and then right click and you can move the whole plane. So you can move the space like this by right clicking and then you can move the plane this way by shift and right click. Okay. We're going to shorten this up just a little bit. We're going to make that 11. There we go. And then we're going to move that up just a bit more. Okay. Now we'll make this a little wider. Too much. Let's make it 6. There we go. So now we have a nice flat space to mount to our truck frame. And if you didn't like how tall it is, so maybe you don't want to see a flat spot clear down here, you can actually make your whole item shorter and then raise it up, and I'll show you in a moment. Here we go. Let's make this 6 tall millimeters. Now we're going to click on that. See, it's all the way at the bottom, but we want it up here at the top. See this little red arrow here? We can click the red arrow and then raise our object. And you'll notice this is kind of how DCP trucks are anyway, or at least DCP fuel tanks, like on Peterbilt, for example. They have this flat spot here, but nothing at the bottom. It just kind of blends in and then rounds off at the bottom of the tank. Now that we have that made, you have another choice. You can copy the yellow box and move it over manually, like we did before. Or if you wanted, you could copy both the yellow and the red band and then move them to this position here. So lots of choices on how you want to be able to do things here. Okay, now we need to put a step in to make a cutout on any object, you need to grab one of these two clear boxes. This was a concept that took me just a little bit to grasp, but I think you'll understand it once we explain it here. Now we need to change the size. We're going to make this 5 millimeters wide and 5 millimeters tall. And then we're going to drag this to the top of the tank, or toward the top of the tank. Now you see this shaded part here? We're only going to make this much of our 3D tank shaded. So I'm going to click on that, use my arrow key to move that out. And now we're going to make our step. So to make a cutout, like you see here, this is what's called a hole. And in Tinkercad, this is how you make the cutout. This thing called the hole here, this clear area, is how we accomplish that. I think I'm going to make that just a wee bit wider too. Oops, let's click one of these boxes. Oh, there it is. Make that 6 millimeters wide. I like that better. Okay, cool. Now to get the actual hole made, I'm going to select all of these items right here, just like that. Now I'm going to group them together. Once I hit this group button, everything here becomes one piece, and the hole will make that cutout show up. Watch this. And there is our step. Let's take a look at, looks like we can make our step a little deeper, or taller, as it were. Yeah, that doesn't look near deep enough. Okay, so we've made this step using the hole feature, but now we want to go back and change it. We can do that by ungrouping. See? Now we have our hole back. Now I want to make this 7. There we go. This number 7 here in red, when I mouse over it, that tells you how far this box is, or hole is, above this plane. So from the surface of the plane to the bottom of the box, it's 7 millimeters. If you click that and change that number, the hole or the box or whatever object you have selected will move. So now it's 5 millimeters from the plane to the bottom of the box. Now we can see that here on the front of the tank. Now we will select that again, and then we're going to group, and now we can see our step there. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, next we need to make a cap, and we're basically done unless we want to add more detail, which would be, of course, up to each individual person. To make our cap, we're going to drag out another cylinder. I'm going to change the color of it so we can see it easy. And I'm going to change the size. We want it more round. We're going to make it nice and round like so. And we're going to make our cap 2 millimeters. Whoops, wrong one. We're going to Control Z. There we go. That's what I want, 2 millimeters. And we're going to make that 2 millimeters. Now we're going to move that to the tank. Now you'll notice I'm using my arrow keys here to move this object. And I can't get it right where I want it in that space right here. Okay, down here at Snap Grid, it's set for 1 millimeter. Use this drop-down menu and you can turn the snap grid off. And now you can do fine detail on where you might want to move an object. This will work for any object on the plane. And of course, this is entirely too long. Let's change it to 10 millimeters just to give us some space to work with. And of course, our fuel cap shouldn't be pointed up. It should be kind of pointed at an angle. So what we're going to do is click this double arrow that's bent. And in here, we can change this to whatever degree we want. Oops, wrong way. There. So I used -30 and now it's pointed at more of an angle. Okay. And we'll just need to decide where we want to put this on the tank. And there we go. That is a basic fuel tank 3D printed. Now that we've made our tank for the driver's side, we might want one for the passenger side. We'll go ahead and select everything. Then we're going to group it just so everything moves together. And we'll make a copy of it. Now we're going to turn it 180 degrees so we have it looking like it would, fit the passenger side. And here I just changed it 180 degrees right here. 180. And there we go. See how we've turned that? Now we have 2. Now we will move it off so we have them back to back, just like you would see on a real truck. Now we have a problem. We have made a copy of this, turned it 180 degrees, and everything's in the wrong space now. Generally, on the passenger side, these two items, the fuel cap and this step, would be in opposite positions, and it would mirror the driver's side. So we can make that happen. There's not an easy way to make that happen in Tinkercad that I've found yet, but we can still do it manually. So see how this whole object is selected? We're going to ungroup the parts, and then we will select it again and continue to ungroup until we see our hull and our fuel cap separately. Now what we can do is take these two items and move them individually. So the green cap is now selected. We're going to move that off to the left. I'm going to turn the grid off for that item, and we're going to move it just a little more. Now we will move the hull to the right. And basically for this particular project, I'm just kind of eyeballing a little bit. As these differences will not be noticeable on the finished items. Now that I've got everything where I want it, I'm selecting it all again. I'm going to group it, and there we go. We have passenger and driver's side fuel tanks. Now the colors are insignificant. Don't worry about the colors. That's not how they print. That's just, you can change that color to be anything you want. I just happen to default to that color. Something I do on fuel tanks, or I've been doing on fuel tanks, is I'll go ahead and separate them a little more. Now I use third parties for printing. I don't own a printer. But I like to put a rod in between these two on the back side. That way you're always ensured to get a proper part count. So here's what we'll do there. We're going to change this. We're going to turn it 180 degrees or 90 degrees. And we need to zoom out just a little bit. There we go. Oh, darn it. 90. And I'm going to make this a 2mm rod. There, now we can see it. And we're going to change it to 15 mil on the length. That way it doesn't cause us any trouble. And now I'm just arbitrarily putting this somewhere in the center, because my goal here is, since I'm using third parties, I'm going to cut that rod off once I get the finished item. And there we go. Now I'm insured to have a proper part count when I order these. Then I know that whoever does the printing for me will get me a driver and passenger side, and they'll be grouped together. And it also reduces part count depending on who you're using. You get charged on every part that you print. So if you're printing one, that's a cost. And then if you print another one in a separate file, that's another cost. So if you have these grouped together like this, that is one part versus 3 or 2 or however many it is you're using. That concludes this tutorial. This is a very rudimentary lesson. Purpose of this is just to get your feet wet and to get you some basic skills so you can begin developing and adding to your skill set as you go. Thanks for watching.